Aureliano had lived 70 long years, most of them wrapped in quiet routines and fading memories, but lately loneliness had become a dense presence in his modest home. The walls carried the tired shades of time, and the recent diagnosis had forced him to confront a truth he never wanted to face: he could no longer live without help. Accepting care felt like surrendering pieces of himself. Yet, the world had already made that decision for him. When Selena knocked on his door for the first time, the air trembled with a delicate tension youth arriving at the doorstep of age. She was just 20, a university student participating in a neighborhood assistance program, assigned to offer support and companionship. The moment Aureliano opened the door, leaning heavily on the frame, their gazes collided like two distant worlds brushing for the first time. His shoulders drooped with the weight of illness and years, while her smile carried the effortless warmth of someone untouched by life's brutality. "Hello, Aureliano. I'm Selena, from the volunteer program," she said gently, her voice quick but kind. "Come in," he replied, his deep, time-worn tone filling the narrow hallway. As she stepped inside, Selena was immediately struck by the heaviness of the atmosphere. Not dirty, not chaotic, just heavy with decades of unspoken stories. Aged photographs sat in frames along a wooden dresser, capturing faces filled with youthful light now long extinguished. An unfinished chess game rested on a table, waiting for hands that no longer had the strength. The air smelled faintly of old paper and forgotten afternoons. Selena, raised in a world of glowing screens and minimalistic spaces, felt as though she had entered a private museum, intimate yet distant, human yet foreign. The 50-year gap between them became almost tangible, a transparent wall separating their realities. She inhaled quietly, accepting the weight of the moment. "Usually I start by tidying up the kitchen, if that's all right," she offered, more to ease the silence than to seek permission. Aureliano lowered himself into a faded green velvet armchair, observing her with tired but curious eyes. "Do as you wish," he said softly. While she rinsed forgotten coffee cups in the sink, Selena tried to decipher the man behind the silence. He didn't seem bitter or defeated, just paused, suspended in a moment between past and present. Aureliano, in turn, watched the effortless brightness in her movements. Her energy illuminated the room in ways he hadn't witnessed in years. When she returned to the living room, she asked gently, "Would you like something prepared, or maybe I can read to you?" "No, my dear. Sit for a moment. Time doesn't rush for me anymore," he murmured with a half-smile. She sat down, crossing her hands neatly on her lap. They talked about simple things: his garden, the lack of sugar in his coffee, her long nights of studying. Aureliano turned out to be a surprisingly engaging conversationalist. His thoughts carried by a slow, contemplative rhythm Selena found strangely soothing. For someone so young and hurried, his presence felt like a window into a life lived at a different pace. Their conversation deepened when Selena admired the old photographs, commenting on how lucky he was to have so many memories around him. Aureliano sighed softly, his gaze lingering on the faces of the past. "Yes, memories stay," he whispered. "But a man at the end of his road doesn't long only for memories." "Selena, have you ever felt the present so deeply it almost hurts?" She thought he meant companionship, human warmth, so she nodded with innocent sincerity. But then his voice shifted, casual, almost weightless. "I have everything prepared for the final stretch. There's only one thing I still wish for: one last spark, that intensity one feels only when the world is new. To feel connection, to love and be loved in the moment. Not forever, just now." It sounds foolish, I know. Selena's heart tightened. She saw only the loneliness beneath his words, not the deeper confession he was making. "It's not foolish, Aureliano. Everyone wants to feel loved," she said gently, resting her hand on his knee in pure compassion. He stared at her hand, silence stretching like a held breath. She pulled it away, flustered by the strange mixture of distance and closeness between them. Aureliano smiled, but something new flickered behind his eyes, a quiet light she didn't recognize. When she rose to leave, she promised, "I'll come tomorrow. Maybe I'll bring flowers." He watched her walk through the doorway, thinking, "She's so clear, so pure." And as she disappeared down the path, a thought took shape inside him, soft, dangerous, and impossible to ignore. A thought that would change everything. Selena returned the next afternoon, carrying a small bouquet of fresh daisies. She placed them in a glass jar on the wooden table, and the simple touch brought a flicker of warmth to the dim room. Over the next days, her visits settled into a gentle rhythm. She cooked soups, organized drawers he had long forgotten, and read to him from books he once cherished. The house, once stagnant, began breathing again. Aureliano observed her with a quiet awe. Her youth wasn't loud, it was soft, like a glow filtering through dusty windows. She moved with an ease that stirred memories he had thought were buried forever. Sometimes, while she swept or folded linens, he would watch her the way someone watches a sunrise, aware that the moment was fleeting, but grateful for its light. One morning, he seemed weaker than usual. His shirt was wrinkled, his hair slightly tousled, and his breathing shallow. Selena approached gently, adjusting the collar of his shirt with a natural tenderness. Her fingers brushed the side of his face, lingering only a heartbeat. To her, it was pure care. Too, it was a reminder of a feeling he thought he'd lost decades ago. "No one has done this for me in years," Aureliano whispered. Selena smiled softly. "It's all right. You're not alone anymore." Days passed, each one deepening the unspoken current between them. Selena, with her bright voice, told him stories of her university life, crowded hallways, impossible deadlines, and her dreams of becoming a writer. Aureliano listened with full attention, as if her words were rare music. He shared fragments of his past, his youth by the riverbanks, old loves, forgotten adventures. When he spoke of Marisa, the girl he once adored, his eyes glimmered with a memory too beautiful to fade. "She smiled like this," he said once, trying to mimic Selena's gentle expression. She laughed, touched by the innocence of the gesture. "Did you love her that much?" she asked. "I loved the way she made me feel alive," Aureliano replied. Selena didn't understand the depth of those words, not yet. But she felt something shifting inside her, a tenderness she hadn't expected, a pull she couldn't name. When she handed him a cup of tea, and their fingers brushed, she felt a spark she quickly dismissed. "Just empathy," she told herself. "He needs comfort. I'm here to help." But the comfort was becoming mutual. One stormy evening, the sky darkened suddenly, rain striking the windows like restless fingers. Aureliano had a fever that left him trembling, and Selena helped him change his damp clothes. As she lifted his arm and guided the fresh shirt over his shoulder, the closeness became undeniable. Their faces were inches apart, breaths mingling in the dim light. For a moment that felt suspended in time, Aureliano looked directly into her eyes. Not with longing alone, but with the raw vulnerability of someone standing at the edge of life. Selena froze, not out of fear, but because she saw something she had never seen before, a heart completely exposed. When she finished dressing him, Aureliano took her hand, not to hold it, but to steady himself. Yet, he didn't let go. The room seemed to shrink around them. Rain softened into a distant hum. Time folded. "Selena." His voice was low. She met his gaze, wide and unguarded. "You remind me of the way life felt when everything was still possible," he whispered. Her breath caught. Part of her wanted to step back. Another part wanted to understand this connection, this strange affection that didn't feel wrong, even though every rule said it should. "I should make you something warm," she managed. But he didn't release her hand right away. When she retreated to the kitchen, her heart was racing. She stared at the boiling pot, trying to steady her thoughts. She was used to the admiration of classmates her age, but this was different. His sincerity disarmed her. His loneliness felt like an open wound she wanted to heal. And buried deep inside her was something she feared. Admitting his trust made her feel seen in a way no one her age ever had. From that night on, their moments grew quieter but heavier. Aureliano started telling her stories not just of the past, but of the dreams he still kept alive in secret. She would sit beside him for longer, listening, offering small touches of reassurance, a hand on his arm, a light squeeze when he seemed overwhelmed. He took each gesture like a gift. The neighbors began to notice her frequent visits. Whispered comments followed her walk down the street. At the university, Celia, her closest friend, voiced the concerns others murmured behind Selena's back. People are talking, Celia warned one afternoon. You spend too much time there. It looks strange. Selena's stomach tightened. It's just compassion. He needs help. Celia sighed. Maybe, but the world doesn't see it that way. The words clung to Selena like shadows. That evening, she arrived at Aureliano's home later than usual. He noticed the change instantly, the heaviness in her steps, the distant look in her eyes. What troubles you, Selena? He asked softly. She opened her mouth to speak, but the truth was tangled in fear, confusion, and something else, something she had never allowed herself to name. Before she could answer, someone knocked sharply at the door. Selena stiffened. Aureliano's face darkened. Someone had come to question the bond growing between them. The knock echoed through the small house like a warning. Selena felt her breath hitch, while Aureliano straightened in his chair with slow, deliberate tension. It wasn't the kind of knock that belonged to a neighbor. It carried intention weight. When he opened the door, Martin, his son, stood framed in the doorway with a cold expression that didn't soften even at the sight of his father's frailty. "Father," Martin said curtly, stepping inside without waiting for an invitation. He glanced at Selena and the many-bow room in one swift, sharp movement, taking in the closeness of the space and the warmth still lingering in the air. "I heard you've been receiving a lot of company." Selena froze, instinctively stepping back toward the hallway. Aureliano noticed and subtly shifted closer to her, a gesture small enough not to provoke Martin but clear enough to protect her. "Selena volunteers here," Aureliano replied calmly. "She helps me with things you no longer have time for." Martin's jaw tightened. "I do what I can. But a 20-year-old girl spending hours alone with a 70-year-old man? Do you understand how that looks?" His eyes burned with accusation, not at his father but at her. Selena swallowed hard. "I'm here because he needs support," she said softly. But Martin's skepticism only sharpened. "Support? Or something else?" He took a step forward, lowering his voice. "You're young, vulnerable. Don't pretend older men can't take advantage of." And Aureliano stiffened, pain and anger flaring beneath his calm exterior. "Enough, Martin," he demanded. "Selena has been nothing but gracious. It's me you should question, not her. If anyone sought closeness, it was I." Selena's breath caught. She felt exposed under Martin's harsh scrutiny, as if her intentions, pure and tangled all at once, were being peeled open for judgment. Her cheeks warmed with a mixture of hurt and shame. "I don't want excuses," Martin snapped. "I want to know what's happening here." Silence stretched. Selena couldn't bring herself to speak. The room felt suddenly too small, too fragile, as if one wrong word would shatter everything she and Aureliano had built. Sensing her distress, Aureliano stepped forward, gripping the edge of his chair for balance. "She is not taking advantage of me," he said, voice steady despite his trembling hands. "If anything, she's giving me more life than anyone else has in years." Martin stared at him, confused, angry, and unsettled. "Father, listen to yourself. This is inappropriate, dangerous. People are talking." Selena felt her heart sink. She had known the rumors were spreading, but hearing them spoken aloud twisted something deep inside her. She thought of Celia, of the whispers at the university, of the glances from neighbors. It hit her all at once, a storm she couldn't outrun. "I should go," Selena whispered. Aureliano turned instantly. "No," he said, more sharply than he intended. His voice softened. "Selena, please." But Martin stepped aside, clearing a path to the door as if sealing the verdict. "Yes, that's the best idea." With trembling fingers, Selena picked up her bag. Aureliano reached out, barely catching her wrist. His palm was warm, desperate, and impossibly gentle. "Don't let him chase you away," he murmured. Her eyes glistened. "I don't want to cause trouble." "You haven't," he insisted. "You've only brought light." Martin scoffed quietly. "This is absurd." Selena's throat tightened. She slipped her hand from Aureliano's grasp and stepped outside. The air was cold, biting against her skin. She didn't look back. But as the door closed behind her, she heard Aureliano's voice, low and raw. "She is the only person keeping me alive." The words struck her like a tremor. She walked away quickly, heart pounding, unsure whether she felt comforted or crushed. The next morning, university halls buzzed with the latest rumor. Students eyed her with poorly disguised curiosity. Someone whispered as she passed. Another snickered. By midday, Celia pulled her aside. "There's talk that you're having some kind of inappropriate relationship with a man old enough to be your grandfather," Celia said carefully, almost apologetically. Selena's stomach twisted. "It's not like that." "I know," Celia said. "But people don't care. They just want A burning ache spread in Selena's chest. Shame, frustration, and something deeper, fear of losing the one place she felt sincere, needed, and seen. That evening, she stood outside Aureliano's home again. She didn't knock right away. Her hand hovered above the door. Trembling, part of her wanted to turn around. Part of her knew she wouldn't. She finally knocked softly. Aureliano opened the door almost instantly, as if he'd been waiting just behind it. His expression softened the moment he saw her. "You came?" he breathed. She stepped inside slowly. "I shouldn't have stayed away." Their eyes held for a moment too long, an unspoken truth shimmering between them. Just as Selena was about to speak, there was a sudden noise from outside. Someone was standing by the window, watching. The world had followed them to the doorstep of their quiet sanctuary. Selena's breath caught when she saw the shadow standing near the window. For one suspended second, she felt as though the walls themselves were watching her. Aureliano moved slowly toward the glass, leaning on the table for support, and peered outside. The figure hurried away the moment his silhouette appeared. Only a fading outline remained under the street lamp's glow. "It was Elda," he murmured, his voice low and troubled. Selena felt her chest tighten. The neighbor? The same woman who always watered her plants with suspiciously lingering glances. "Why was she watching us?" Selena whispered. Aureliano sighed as he lowered himself into a chair. "Because people see what they want to see. They fear what they don't understand." He looked at her gently, and they judge faster than they think. Selena's pulse throbbed with unease. It wasn't just a neighbor's curiosity. It felt like the beginning of something heavier, something waiting to break. She walked toward him slowly, her steps soft but firm. "I don't want this to hurt you," she said quietly, "or make your life harder." He raised his eyes to hers. In that gaze, she saw exhaustion, longing, and something deeper, gratitude. "My life was already hard," Aureliano replied. "You didn't bring judgment, you brought warmth." Selena sat across from him, her knees brushing lightly against his. The contact was brief but grounding. She watched him with a tenderness that surprised her. She had known loneliness, but Aureliano carried it like a second skin. And in some way she hadn't anticipated, she had grown attached to the man who trusted her enough to show every crack in that armor. Over the next few days, whispers grew louder. Elda's story traveled across the neighborhood, twisting, reshaping, sharpening. At the university, rumors turned cruel. Some accused her of using Aureliano for attention. Others claimed he was manipulating her. Selena learned to walk through hallways with lowered eyes, but the hurt seeped deeper each day. One late afternoon, after another exhausting day filled with stares, she found herself at Aureliano's door once more. She didn't even knock. She simply stood there, breathing in the quiet scent of old wood and lavender oil he used to calm his nerves. He appeared from the hallway, his steps slow but steady. "Selena," he said softly, "you look tired." "I'm overwhelmed," she admitted. "Everyone thinks the worst, and I don't know how to defend something I don't fully understand myself." Aureliano's expression softened. He gestured for her to sit beside him on the worn-out couch. When she did, he didn't touch her immediately, but the closeness between them felt charged like a fragile thread stretched tight. "You don't have to understand everything," he murmured. "Some connections aren't meant to be logical." "But they think it's wrong," she whispered. Her voice trembled more than she wanted it to. "And what do you think?" he asked gently. She hesitated. Her breath slowed. She looked at his hands aged, trembling slightly, yet steady in their presence. Then she looked into his eyes, those soft, grateful eyes that had watched her with respect, with care, with quiet affection. I think, she began, her voice barely audible. I think being here feels honest. Aureliano closed his eyes for a moment, as though absorbing her words. When he opened them again, they shone with a light she had seen only rarely, something warm, almost luminous. Then let that honesty guide you, not their fear. Selena felt something shift. It wasn't romantic in the young, impulsive sense. It was a deeper kind of closeness, a bond carved from vulnerability and trust. She reached out slowly, placing her hand over his. The gesture wasn't bold. It wasn't dramatic. It was a quiet offering. Aureliano exhaled shakily. "Selena, I'm here," she whispered. "No matter what they say." The room fell into a soft stillness. For the first time in days, neither of them felt the weight of the world pressing in. Instead, there was just the two of them, warmth in a cold season. Hours passed as they talked. About life. About regret. About the strange comfort they found in each other's presence. At some point, exhaustion took over, and Aureliano leaned back, pressing a hand to his chest. A flicker of pain passed through him. "Are you all right?" Selena asked, alarmed. He nodded slowly. "Just tired." But something in his voice betrayed a deeper truth. She moved closer instinctively, placing a steadying hand on his shoulder. The touch grounded him, and he let out a breath that sounded almost like relief. "Selena," he murmured again, softer this time. Their eyes met with a tenderness that bordered on dangerous. She felt the pull again, that subtle gravity she never meant to step into. Then, suddenly, a sharp, insistent knock interrupted the moment. Selena froze. Aureliano's expression darkened. The knock came again, louder. This time, someone wasn't just watching anymore. Someone was demanding answers. The knock thundered through the quiet house, breaking the fragile calm that had wrapped around Selena and Aureliano. She stiffened, her hand still resting lightly on his shoulder. Aureliano's breath trembled. For a man already fragile, shock was a dangerous thing. "Stay here," he whispered, voice unsteady but determined. Selena shook her head. "No, you're not well. Let me—" But he was already rising slowly, gripping the edge of the furniture for balance. He moved toward the door like someone walking toward a storm he had long expected. Selena followed a step behind, anxiety threading through every heartbeat. When he opened the door, Martine stood there again, this time not alone. Beside him was a woman from the volunteer agency, wearing a crisp uniform and an expression that revealed she already believed the worst. "Father," Martine said tightly, "we need to talk." Aureliano leaned against the doorframe, breathing unevenly. "What now?" he asked quietly. The woman stepped forward with a polite but firm nod. "We've received several concerns from neighbors, and from your son." Her eyes flicked toward Selena, who instinctively stepped back, as though her mere presence was enough to incriminate her. Martine continued, voice sharp. "This situation has gone too far. She's here at all hours, people are talking. Her visits aren't professional, this is inappropriate." Selena felt something break inside her. She had come to care, to help, not to be treated like a threat. "I've only done what the program trained me to do," she said softly. "He needed company." "Company is one thing," Martine snapped. "But the neighbors say you're here late at night, that you close the curtains, that my father behaves differently." Aureliano's jaw tightened. "Different because she treats me like a human being, Martine," he said, his voice rough. With emotion, not like a burden. The agency worker raised a hand. "Sir, please. We don't want conflict. But rules exist for a reason. Volunteers must maintain boundaries. It seems those boundaries have blurred." Selena lowered her gaze. The accusations stung because they were born from truth twisted by malice. Yes, boundaries had blurred, but not with manipulation, not with ill intent. They blurred because two souls, broken in different ways, had learned to lean on each other. "I think," Martine said firmly, "that Selena should step away from this case." Immediately, the words hit Selena like a cold blade. She turned to Aureliano instinctively, searching his eyes for guidance, for permission to keep fighting. "No," Aureliano said, shaking his head slowly. "Absolutely not." His voice cracked, but the conviction in it was fierce. "She's the only person who has kept me alive these past months. Without her, I have nothing left." The confession hung in the work. Air. Too raw, too honest. Even Martine flinched, momentarily silenced by the weight of his father's words. The agency woman exhaled, shifting uncomfortably. "Sir, emotional dependency like this is exactly why boundaries exist. It's unhealthy for both of you." Selena stepped forward before Aureliano could respond. "If my presence harms him more than it helps, then maybe I should stop coming." Aureliano turned toward her suddenly, eyes wide with a kind of fear she had never seen in him. "Selena, please, don't leave me." Her throat tightened painfully. "I don't want to," she whispered. "But this isn't just about wanting." Martine seized the moment. "Then it's settled. The agency will reassign her, and I will arrange a full-time caregiver." "No," Aureliano repeated, louder this time. "You don't understand. You won't understand." He reached out, grabbing Selena's hand as though it were the last anchor keeping him standing. She felt his grip tremble, not with weakness, but with desperation. The agency woman stepped back. "I'm sorry," she said gently, "but this is our decision." Aureliano's breath hitched. For a moment, he looked as if the ground beneath him had cracked open. His hand slipped from Selena's. His body sagged slightly, and he clutched his chest. "Aureliano?" Selena gasped. He waved her off weakly, trying to steady himself, but the strain was too much. His knees buckled, and Selena rushed to catch him as he collapsed onto the couch. Panic surged through the room. Martine's expression shifted instantly from anger to fear. "Father!" he shouted, rushing forward. The agency worker hurried toward her phone. "Call an ambulance." Aureliano's breath grew shallow, fragile. He lifted a trembling hand toward Selena, barely touching her cheek. "Don't go," he whispered through strained breaths. "Please, don't go." Tears blurred her vision. She held his hand tightly, refusing to look away. But outside, footsteps gathered. Neighbors, voices, whispers. Their sanctuary was crumbling. And as sirens began to echo faintly in the distance, Selena realized something terrifying. This moment might be the last time she would ever be allowed to touch him. The ambulance ride dissolved into a blur of lights and cold metal. Selena sat pressed against the wall of the vehicle, trembling as paramedics worked over Aureliano's fragile body. His breathing was shallow, but his hands searched blindly in the air. She reached for it, giving him the only comfort she could offer while the world tore them apart piece by piece. "Selena," he whispered, barely audible under the oxygen mask. "I'm here," she murmured, squeezing his hand gently. "I'm not leaving." But the moment they reached the hospital, that's exactly what the world forced her to do. A nurse blocked her path with a firm gesture. "Family only." Martine rushed inside behind the gurney, looking back at Selena with conflicted eyes, anger clouded by fear. She remained in the waiting corridor, arms wrapped around herself, heart pounding against her ribs. Minutes passed like hours. Every door that opened made her flinch, expecting the worst. The whispers of hospital staff, the cold fluorescent lights, the sterile smell, all of it felt like judgment closing in. Finally, Martine emerged, his face pale and exhausted. "He's stable," he said quietly. Relief hit her so hard that her knees weakened. But the next words came like a blow. "He doesn't want visitors right now." Selena blinked in disbelief. "That can't be true." Martine hesitated, guilt flickering in his eyes. "Maybe he thinks distance will help you both. Maybe he's realizing the trouble this has caused." Trouble. The word stung more than any insult ever had. Selena stepped back, eyes burning. She felt like the world was pushing her out of a space she had earned with compassion, sincerity, and a depth of feeling she had never known before. That night, she walked home through a city that suddenly felt too loud, too bright, too indifferent. Her phone buzzed with messages from Celia, but she couldn't bring herself to answer. She climbed into bed, fully dressed, clutching the hem of her sleeve, where Aureliano's trembling fingers had last held on. Days passed with heavy silence. The university launched an ethics inquiry, and the volunteer agency formally removed her from the program. She received stares everywhere she went, some sympathetic, many cruel. But the worst silence of all came from Aureliano. Then, one late afternoon, she returned home to find an envelope slipped under her door. Her name was written in a shaky, familiar hand. Her heart stopped. With trembling fingers, she opened it. Inside was a letter ink faded at the edges, every stroke heavy with truth. Aureliano's handwriting wandered like a tired river, but every word felt alive. My dear Selena, if you are reading this, it means I had the strength to finish the letter, but not the courage to hand it to you. You gave me something I thought life had stolen from me forever, a sense of being seen. Fully, gently, profoundly. You didn't cure my illness, but you cured my loneliness. And that is a miracle. I don't want the world to punish you for offering me mercy in a moment when I was fading. So, if distance is the price I must pay to protect you, then I pay it willingly. But know this, you were my final light. Selena pressed the paper to her chest, feeling it warm against her skin as tears slipped down her cheeks. She whispered his name into the quiet of her room, as though he might still hear her. A week later, she received the call. Aureliano had passed away peacefully during the night. The words hollowed her from the inside. She went to his home one last time. Martin met her at the door, his expression heavy, not with anger, but with a grief he didn't know how to carry. I found this in his drawer, Martin said, offering a small worn diary. You should have it. She hesitated. Are you sure? He nodded. I misjudged you, he admitted. He wrote about you often. Not as someone who took advantage of him, but as someone who saved him. Selena held the diary like a fragile heartbeat. She stepped inside Aureliano's home, the place where she had learned compassion in its rawest form, where she had grown in ways no classroom could teach her. The house felt different now, empty, yet full of echoes. She sat in his chair, opened the diary, and read his memories. Not of scandal, not of forbidden desire, but of gratitude, warmth, and the quiet, unexpected bond that had transformed both their lives. When she finished, she closed the diary slowly, breathing in the stillness. I won't forget you, she whispered. I won't hide what you taught me. Selena left his home with a steady heart. The world might never understand, but she did, and that was enough to rebuild herself. As she walked away from the small house under the soft evening sky, a sense of peace washed over her, an understanding that true connection doesn't always fit into society's neat boxes. Some bonds are meant to be felt, not accepted. Lived, not explained. Aureliano had left her with a truth she would carry for the rest of her life. Love, in any form, is never wasted. Thank you for listening. If you believe in second chances and strength after pain, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Every click helps us bring more real stories to life.